proclaiming the radical love and welcome that is at the heart of our faith. The Unitarian Church of Lincoln aspires to be a loving community, uniting reason with spiritual exploration to transform ourselves and the world. Welcome to this loving community. May we, in our gathering here, be about the work of transforming ourselves and the world. And now join me in singing hymn 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. And please rise as you are able. I always have to remember when I'm up here that when we sing, I have to get away from the microphone. Okay, now it's time for Story for All Ages, and I was thinking, I think tomorrow is the first day of school, and so I thought, no, the kids are all going to be spending their last day of freedom playing, but I see little kids here in the audience. So why don't you all come down? I'm going to read a story. Joy's house. What? They're ready before I am. Good morning, all. Oh. Is the mic on or off? There we go. Okay, I have to I think I have to sit like this and talk to the microphone. So yesterday afternoon, I spent the day in the library looking for books. And I haven't done that for kids for 30 years, probably. Our son is 36. So it's been a long time since I looked at kids' books. And I picked out a stack, and I read through them all. And then I got to this one, I thought, that's a good story. I like this story. But then I thought, I better check with Chelsea. Because I didn't want to bring a book that she'd say, no, you don't want to read that one. And fortunately, she said, oh yeah, we've read that one before. That's a good book. So I don't know if you remember this one, but we'll see. I like the pictures. So I'm going to try and hold it up so that you can hear me and see the pictures. The very best news ever has begun to spread all over the world, one heart at a time. Shout it from the mountaintops. Every single one of us is connected to those we love by invisible strings. That means Giovanna and her daddy are always together, even though he moved to a new house. Omar can feel the tugs of love from his parents, even though he is living far away at school. Mr. Chang feels Mrs. Chang close by, even though she died a very long time ago. And you, at this very moment, may feel the string of someone close to you, even though they aren't there. You can't see it, but it's real. See this? I don't know if you can see that string going on to the next page. Our strings reach to everyone we know. They travel far and wide to families and friends, classmates and coaches, to bus drivers and babysitters, neighbors and pets, to aunts and uncles and grandparents and grandchildren, and countless other people. And all of those people have hundreds of strings. Ooh, here's a different one. Soaring high over rocky peaks and across the 7 seas, deep into jungles and valleys, and winding through the busiest of cities. All these strings crisscross one another and create a nest that covers the planet, interlacing us together, cradling us forever. So you can see the string. I don't know if you can see the string leading to the next person. Ooh, look at this. I like this picture. That's a neat picture. Seahorses. The web has no borders and wraps every continent. Within it lives butterflies and flowers, starfish and seahorses, lions and ants, rivers and snowstorms, and all human beings. Giovanna, Omar, Mr. Chang, and of course, you and me too. Ooh, another nice picture. I like this one. Some say it even reaches to our ancestors and those we cherish in the beyond. One tug on a string sends love to every one of us, woven together in this divine tapestry. And that means just one good deed travels across the entire web. Everything is linked. Sometimes the pages stick together. But sometimes folks forget. When they can't feel their strings, they forget about our invisible web. And that's when strings get tangled up. Like when lonely Lucia isn't invited to sit with anyone at her school at lunchtime. Or when Stefano wishes his friend Marcus wasn't so bossy when they played. Or when Mrs. Patel struggles at work without help and she just wants to quit. Even violence and war can erupt when too many of us forget the web. When strings are ignored, they can become weak and begin to unravel. But the more people who care about the web, the stronger it remains. The web feels like every parent since the beginning of time, holding and protecting each one of us in millions of gentle arms. What could be stronger than all those hands holding us close? so many supportive fingers can always find a way to untangle strings so that love can flow again. But it's up to every one of us to spread the word. Our time is right now. As we tell our family and friends, sisters will remind brothers, who will write to cousins, who will call their great-grandparents, who will just nod and smile as if they have always known. If we remember the web and tug at it often, nobody will ever be left out. We will see others more clearly. The people of the world will look into each other's eyes, and they will smile at one another. And when one of them cries, they will all want to help. Not very exciting? And they do. Marcos apologizes to Stefan, who forgives his friend, and they have even more fun playing. Someone helps Mrs. Patel at work and tells her what a great job she's doing. She remembers that she's important and feels happy. And Louisa feels warm and bubbly inside when a few of the kids in class ask her to join them under the banyan tree for lunch. She knows right then that the invisible web is real. After school, Louisa cries with joy as she strokes her cat, who puts the news to the stars, and the stars whisper the secret to the clouds, who share it with the songbirds, who serenade the world with this exquisite melody of love at the start of each morning and all during the day, until, as the invisible web glitters in the magic of twilight, the owls take over and hoot the news throughout the night. The invisible web is alive. It's time right now. It breathes as we breathe, pulsating all over our earth, the single heartbeat of life and love. And do you know what that makes us all? One big happy family. Look at all those. I looked at this and I saw they've got a band. There's drums and cymbals and maracas. I was wondering what he was holding, that blue thing in his hand that looks like maracas, and a tuba. And so there's lots of music. And that's the end of the story. So, thank you all. I'm sorry I wasn't very exciting this morning. Maybe next time we'll read a Marvel comic book. Okay, I think you can all go back to your classes now. Thank you for coming up.
Man, I got some coffee breath.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. So, joys and sorrows. This is the part where the first time I did this, I was terrified because I want to be respectful. Everyone here has some really things that we all want to do cartwheels over and beat the drum over, and we also have things that are kind of rough. So, a central part of our service is the time we join together as a community to mark those moments. We share those. We have. We share one another our joys and our sorrows at these events to mark the steps on our journey. The threads of sorrow and those of joy are intertwined in the fabric of our lives. That really fit the book. Present for all, remembered by all. So if you have someone or something you'd like to share a joy with, can you please say their name or spout it out in joy? And I'll try and watch the live chat as well.
Uncle Buzz, 100 years old.
100 years old, wow. That's awesome. Well, I have a joy I'm going to share. If the weather cooperates and my back is good, the Unitarian Church of Lincoln is going to have a little pre-pantry installed by the end of the week. So, there's no joy on the internet. I just find that funny. Come on, internet, come through for me. Is there anyone else with a joy?
93-year-old twin sisters pictured in the paper this morning.
93 years old. Twin sister, all right.
Identical twin sisters.
Okay. Very identical twin sisters, awesome.
My friend Kathy graduated with her master's degree yesterday.
Wow, congratulations, Kathy. Master's degree. So, sorrows, right? We all have them. Every single one here has something that is that rock in their shoe. Sometimes it's worse than that. Can you say your name or someone you're thinking of that is struggling and needs some emotional TLC?
Dana and Craig.
Dana and Craig? Cassia? I missed a joy. I apologize. There is joy on the internet. Erica is celebrating my 53rd birthday. Happy to be on the planet, and I'm happy she is too. So could we just take a moment to think about those joys and sorrows? We all have them. Sometimes they're hard to talk about. Sometimes we don't want them out in the space. So if we could just take a moment to think about the folks next to us that may not be comfortable saying that. Thank you. We're going to do a song. It is called "'Tis a Gift, Be Simple." It's number 16, and from what my notes say, we do it 2 times because it's short.
Let there be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place, which is sacred to so many of us, a community of memory and of hope, for we are now the keepers of the dream. Each week we take up a collection to support the work of this church and our partners in the community. We do this because just as we all grow from our participation in this community, we all give back through our time, our talent, and our treasure. If you're online to give, you can text UCL Lincoln and the amount to 73256. That's UC Lincoln and the amount to 73256. The offering will now be gratefully received.
The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. This land is holy, and so are we. This land is holy, and so are we. This land is holy, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The storm is raging, and so are we. The storm is raging, and so are we. The storm is raging, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The world is ready, and so are we. 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 This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The tide is rising, and so are we. 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 This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be.
This working? Yeah. Okay. Everyone comfortable? Good. I only got 90 minutes, so I'm going to sit out here and look at the slideshow. Basically, we're all fans of recycling, right? Well, this is a recycled slideshow. I presented this at Ignite Lincoln Thursday night, and I had 5 minutes and 20 slides, but you're getting the 90-minute version here. So anyway, it was about, we started the pantries a few months before Christmas, before the pandemic hit, Melanie's dad built one. We put it out, and it just snowballed. It took off. And then the pandemic hit, and it snowballed even more. Other folks wanted them. The food insecurity got real ugly real quick in Lincoln. And so as of later this week, I think there will be 42 of them in the city of Lincoln, all throughout neighborhoods. People put these boxes in their yard because they give a you-know-what about each other and their community, and it's pretty awesome. We put this in our front yard not knowing what we were doing. You know, we just put it up saying, we'll try. We didn't realize cans of stuff would freeze till you got a mess. But you learn, you know, you swing the bat. You don't swing the bat, you don't hit a ball until you swing the bat. So we just kept trying different things. We have such an amazing congregation here, and just the community has just really stepped up to help each other. And I will be first in line to complain about potholes in the city of Lincoln and those kinds of things like everybody else. But when it comes down to it, I care about everyone here, and it sure seems like they all care about everyone here. So it's just been really cool. This is, like I said, it's snowballed. It's every weekend now, is almost every weekend. Jack wants to go help people. So it's a family event that we're wearing the truck out, that's for sure, but that's what we got it for. It's just been amazing watching so many people step up to help. This was the Journal-Star donated these boxes to us. Melanie's dad ripped them apart and made them, concocted them so that they could be pantries throughout neighborhoods. There's some brilliant folks that I love right there. But they're all over Lincoln. They're really amazing. Before you go, I've got some cards I'll give out that have maps as where they are and what you can donate and that kind of information. That there's a group of pantry hosts, of some of them anyway, throughout the city. It's just been awesome. And some people say, well, what if it's empty? And I think that's okay if it's empty, because that's people who drive by, see it empty and go, wow, food insecurity is a problem we need to work on. So I think that's okay. One of the beauties of the pantries is they are open 24/7. So if you get off work at 11:30 at night and you need to get your breakfast for your child, you can go pick up a box of cereal. This was a club that was a summer camp that got together, and they stuffed, I think, some in Omaha, some in all of the ones in Lincoln. It was like, I think they said 50 or 60 total. Yes, they went all over the place. I was just totally impressed. This is one of the quotes from the Waverly group here that I just thought was, wow. Like, this was just from me trying to put a box in my front yard, and I did something stupid in reverse, believe it or not. So the speech that I gave on Thursday was about, this is a really cool thing. All these folks step up. It's so awesome. I love it. Now my ask for everyone else is to step up and, you know, if you're a football player and you're a hockey player or a basketball player or any kind of thing that's really even successful, even if it's, you name it, it's about being aggressive at it, right? Well, I think us UUs, I want to ask you to step up and become aggressively compassionate. And that's kind of my quote that it ends with once this cute little boy's off the screen. And here's some stats, 1 in 8 people. So one out of the 8 people you see every day doesn't know where their supper is tonight. Let that sink in. So I ask you, please help me become aggressively compassionate. Is that the last I'm supposed to do? Now, ladies and gentlemen, hymn number 3, right? No. We are a gentle, angry people, number 170.
Thank you, Michael. That story fit right in with what I think I want to talk about. Soon after the supermajority of the Supreme Court overthrew the precedent set by Roe versus Wade 50 years ago, and after the court ruled that a high school football coach could lead his team in prayer before and after the game, some Supreme Court justices suggested that same-sex marriage and even access to contraceptives may no longer be acceptable to the Supreme Court. In reaction to those decisions, someone who I know asked, how can I be most effective with my time and resources in response to the decisions of the Supreme Court? This was said with some sadness and a hint of hopelessness. I think many of us had grown comfortable with the role of the Supreme Court as a protector of human and civil rights against the demands of a majority. Our UU principles affirm that we support justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, and the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. Today, economic equity and compassion appear to be scarce in America. Democracy at its most basic level, voting rights, appears to be under threat in America. So how would we answer the question, what can I do now to effectively defend and sustain justice, equity, compassion, and democracy in America today? As I thought about that question in preparing for the service, I remembered a book that I read several years ago that told the stories of people who had addressed the same question, and one story in particular that I have remembered since I read the book 20 years ago. The book is Soul of a Citizen, Living with Conviction in Challenging Times by Paul Loeb. Many of us would agree that we still live in challenging times. However, the title of the book bothered me a little bit. It seems a little exclusionary. Perhaps that's because I don't believe we have a soul. And I don't think that the distinction between citizens of the United States of America and everyone else is as important to me as it is to many other Americans. As Unitarian Universalists, we tend to talk about the spirit among us rather than an individual soul. The Transcendentalists described it as an oversoul, a shared spiritual bond among all people, all life. When we talk about the inherent worth and dignity of every person, we include people who are not citizens of the United States of America. At the same time, American nativists and America firsters seem to marginalize immigrants and people who live in other countries. And I'm going to admit that I may be an extremist for democracy. I believe that anyone who lives in the United States should be able to vote in our elections. If you are bound by U.S. laws and pay taxes, then I believe that you should have the right to vote. But that's a discussion for another day. Again, the title of my homily today is Spirit of a Community. I prefer that we share a common spirituality as a community rather than as isolated individuals. Now, Loeb's goal in this book is to encourage more people to become engaged in social change. The book is roughly structured, as most books are, into chapters and sections, but I've found that the book is more like a collection of 1 or 2 page essays addressing how to become more engaged in social action. It's a book you can pick up and read a page or two for encouragement and inspiration. Generally, Loeb argues that we shouldn't wait to have completed exhaustive research on a social issue before we address social problems. He argues that I don't necessarily have to wait until I have all the answers to all the questions. He argues that we need to start acting. What is the most effective use of my time and resources? Loeb suggests that we may have more of an impact on society than we recognize. The story that I remembered so clearly from Soul in a Citizen from 20 years ago describes how one person had greater influence and a larger impact than she realized. This is the story that I thought of when someone asked, "What is the most effective use of my time and resources?" We need to remember that very little of worth in our society is something that someone didn't fight for. Sometimes our efforts appear utterly futile when we seem to be rolling Sisyphus's rock uphill only to watch it roll back again and again. In the early 1960s, my friend Lisa Pettit, now a retired MIT professor, was a young widow with 4 small kids. She took 2 of them to a vigil in front of the White House to protest nuclear testing. The vigil was small, 100 women at most. Rain poured down. Lisa's children were restless, frustrated, and soaked. The women joked about how President Kennedy was no doubt sitting inside drinking hot chocolate, warm and comfortable, and not even looking at their signs. A few years later, the movement against nuclear testing had grown, and Lisa attended another march in Washington, considerably larger. One speaker was pediatrician Benjamin Spock, whose book, Baby and Child Care, had sold 50 million copies, making him probably the most influential medical authority in post-World War II America. Spock described how he'd come to take a stand on the nuclear issue. Because of his stature, his decision was immensely consequential and would pave the way for his equally important opposition to the Vietnam War. Spock mentioned being in D.C. a few years earlier and seeing a small group of women marching with their kids in the pouring rain. I thought if those women were out there, their cause must be really important. As he described the scene and the setting and how much he was moved, Lisa realized that Spock was referring to her group. This story gave me a few ideas about what we should consider about how we spend our time in the struggle for social justice. First, the demonstration outside the White House was small, apparently less than 100 adults and probably fewer children. They were not attracting much attention from the president, other government leaders, or the media. Their demonstration may have seemed futile to them, perhaps not a good return on their invested time and resources. but they did bring attention to their cause to at least one person who witnessed their commitment to the issue and was himself inspired to invest his time and resources in an issue that concerned them. Second, the importance to the people demonstrating outside that rainy, rainy day motivated the marchers to continue marching in the rain, even though it appeared that no one was paying attention. They showed up. They raised the issue as best they knew how. They spoke out, not knowing or expecting an immediate impact. In the case of Lisa, it does not appear that she was discouraged by that rainy day demonstration outside the White House. A few years later, she was back in D.C. at a much larger demonstration protesting about the same issue. She persevered in her efforts to address the issue of nuclear testing. Finally, what appears important to me about the story may not be obvious, is that the struggle for social justice and peace is not a set piece. There is no beginning, middle, and end to the pursuit of social justice and peace. Over time, the issues change. We change. But the process of social change continues. 160 years ago, Americans owned slaves. About the same time, President Lincoln seemed to be debating how many Native American men he should hang to appease white settlers. Slightly more than 100 years ago, women were not allowed to vote in the United States. About 50 years ago, the Stonewall riots began a process of acknowledging the inherent rights, worth, and dignity of LGBTQ people. Now we are confronted with the possibility of an existential threat to the progress the United States has made over the past 200 years. But what do we do in our current situation? To return to the original question, how can I most effectively work for social change? The 2010 revised edition of Soul of a Citizen, excuse me, oh, I think I have water. The 2010 revised edition of Soul of a Citizen includes 10 suggestions for effective citizen engagement. To those of you who are seeking effective ways to pursue social change, I'd like to read these suggestions to you and have you consider how these suggestions may affect your own engagement in a social change movements. Some suggestions are fairly straightforward and may be easy for you to adopt. You may already practice some of these suggestions. Others may be very difficult, but I would like you to consider whether you want to pursue one or two of the suggestions as you think about your own social justice activities. And again, excuse me. That reminded me that our speaker last week, and his first name was it Trace?
Taylor Keene.
Taylor Keene. What I thought was interesting, he spoke about his Sacred Seeds project, but he also acknowledged that we've been doing some work around the issue of land acknowledgement and the land that America took from the indigenous people. But what he said, he kind of warned us, I think. He said, this is not going to be as easy as you may think. This may be a difficult process. And so I think that's that's appropriate. You know, I hope that it's not too easy. We may read an article, an amendment or a land acknowledgement statement and vote yes and think that that's done. But I think there's a lot more work that we have to do before we get to that point to fully understand what a land acknowledgement may mean. And then once we have accepted that, then the question will be, what do we do? So here's my list, and I'd just like to ask you to, as I read these, to think, does that make sense to me? Is that something I need to try? Suggestion 1, this is the easy one. Start where you are. You don't need to know everything, and you certainly don't need to be perfect. I think that's, for someone who's saying, I'm not sure how to get engaged, how to get involved, I need to research the issues. I need to study this more. And what he's suggesting here is start where you are. You know, if it's an issue that is concerning you, just begin it. You know, you'll make mistakes. I think Michael admitted he's made a few mistakes with the little pantries, but I think they've become a real success. Suggestion 2, take things step by step. You set the pace of your engagement. Don't worry about being swallowed up, because you will determine how much you get involved. And this is one I have to think about, because I think I tend to sign up for too many things. 3, build supportive community. You can accomplish far more with even a small group of good people than you can alone. And I would argue we are a supportive community. If there are issues that are important to you, talk to the people in the congregation. There may be other people working on the same issues that you're interested in. Be strategic and intentional. Ask what you're trying to accomplish, where you can find allies, and how to best communicate the urgencies you feel. And to me, this is a suggestion that if you're looking for some way to be engaged, there are lots of organizations out there that if you get in touch with them and work with them, they will help you find the right path. Suggestion number 5, enlist the uninvolved. They have their own fears and doubts, so they won't participate automatically. You have to work actively to engage them. If you do, there's no telling what they'll go on to achieve. And this one in particular, I think, I read some articles about the defeat of the referendum in Kansas recently. And my impression is that one of the reasons that they succeeded is they just didn't say, oh, we're going to talk to Democrats, or, you know, we're going to only talk to a certain groups of people. My impression is they talked to a lot of people across the spectrum. And so it wasn't just progressives or liberals or Democrats who helped defeat that initiative in Kansas. And I think that's going to have a big effect. I mean, I think that's had an effect here in Nebraska. I think that the legislature decided, the unicameral decided not to try to pass extreme legislation. That may come up again, but I think that made them hesitate. That referendum in Kansas lost by 18 percentage points, so that was a pretty significant defeat. So, and that also gets you to the suggestion number 6, seek out unlikely allies. The more you widen the circle, the more you'll have a chance of breaking through the entrenched barriers to change. So again, I I think I'm active in election campaigns and that sort of thing, and I think what tends to happen is we focus, both political parties focus so much on the primaries and you know, the issues that are of most importance to people who have already decided, you know, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, whatever. There's a lot of people who decline to state. And what tends to happen, I think, is that a lot of political candidates, first of all, they usually don't have to talk to undeclared voters in a primary. And then in the general election, again, they tend to say, it's all about the turnout. I'm just going to get all the Democrats out, and that's all I have to do. But I think a lot more success can be had if we spend more time talking to independents. Suggestion 7, persevere. I think, again, Michael, I suspect you persevered through some difficult spots. Change most often takes time. The longer you continue working, the more you'll accomplish. Now, this is one of my favorites. Suggestion 8, savor the journey. Changing the world shouldn't be grim work. Take time to enjoy nature, good music, good conversation, and whatever else lifts your soul. Savor the company of good people working for change. And I think there's a book title, I don't know where else it came from, but I think it was a book about Steve Jobs, and the title was The Journey is the Reward. And I think that's something we need to think about, is how are we making this fun? How do we make social change fun? You know, we need to support each other and congratulate each other and savor the wins and that sort of thing. And I think we need to do more of that. Suggestion 9. Now, I may disagree a little bit with this one. Think large. Don't be afraid to tackle the deepest rooted injustices and to tackle them on a national or global scale. Remember that many small actions can shift the course of history. I think that's true, but for some reason I've narrowed my focus a little bit. I'm kind of focused on Lancaster County. That seems to be a scale that I can comprehend. I'm not sure I'm ready for global leadership and activism yet. Number 10, listen to your heart. Not your heart beating, but your heart. It's why you're involved to begin with. It's what will keep you going. And so, as you try to cope with the time demands of being active in social issues, you know, sometimes you have to say, you know, this doesn't really fit for me. I think I need to do something else. So be prepared for that. So to go through the list again, start where you are. Take things step by step. Build supportive community. Be strategic and intentional. Enlist the uninvolved. Seek out unlikely allies. Persevere. Savor the journey. Think large. Listen to your heart. I hope the person who asked the question, what should I do? What's the most effective use of my time? I hope that person is listening and is moving on and trying to get started where you are. And I just thought we needed some, I don't know, things seem to be so difficult and desperate over the last few months that I think we need to think about how we respond and what activities we engage in. I think we need to do that. We need help. So may it be. Responsive reading, 5, 6, 7. Please join me. You don't have to stand up. 5, 6, 7. I'll read the regular text, and if you would read the italics. Oh, I guess they have it on the screen. To Be of Use by Marge Piercy. I want to be with people who submerge in the task. Who stand in the line and haul in their places. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. Greek amphorias for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. And I have, closing words. So, this is my standard closing words. I keep thinking I should find something else, but I just like this one so much. If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may come true. If you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Go in peace.
I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. Love is gentle, love is kind. Love is the only answer in hard times. Hate solves nothing and brings us down. Love is the only thing that turns it round. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. Dream of love, dream with your heart. When setting out in life, make love your start. When times are hard, love finds a way. Even when the word is hard to say. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden is too great a burden to bear. I have decided to stick with love.